One shocking quote about financial freedom I came across the other day stated that, according to the Social Security Administration, of 100 people at the beginning of their working careers, only 1 will be wealthy, 4 will be financially secure, and 5 will continue working because they have to pay their bills and not because they want to. 36 will be deceased, and 44 will be penniless and reliant on the government, friends, and family to take care of them, meaning that only 5% of people will ever succeed in building a life of financial freedom, and the other 95% will struggle for the rest of their lives. Reading that quote really hit home for me because I was aware of a time in my life when I was headed toward a life of struggle, but I was able to escape that fate because I knew that if I could do it, anyone else could too, which is why I wanted to discuss it today. First of all, if you're new to my channel, hello and welcome. I'll be sharing some stories and insights from my personal experience as someone who moved from being broke to financially free, as well as what it means to be financially free and the actions you can take to get there. In my opinion, the best way to define financial freedom is to have enough cash on hand and savings to support the lifestyle you desire. However, there are several obstacles that can prevent people from achieving financial freedom. In the description box below, I'll include a link to a video where my husband discusses his experiences growing up impoverished in China. Some people are born into poverty, while others develop lousy financial habits that keep them impoverished and broke. Broke due to difficult circumstances, such as losing their job or being diagnosed with a chronic illness. In my case, I found myself in a difficult situation as a result of a series of unfortunate events and some poor decisions I made. At one point in my early 20s, I had dropped out of college and was working multiple low-paying jobs to make ends meet when my dad's health deteriorated, and we knew he wouldn't be around for long. That kind of gave me a kick in the butt. In order to accomplish that, I had to leave an abusive relationship, which I was able to do, but leaving that relationship meant having to part with a lot of stuff, which meant I didn't have a lot of money to buy new stuff either. I remember walking around campus in the winter, and the snow was really thick, but I didn't have a winter coat or boots, so I was just wearing a sweatshirt over a t-shirt and some simple tennis shoes on my feet, which made me practically freeze. During the class, my somewhat jovial professor noticed my socks hanging beneath the chair. He then proceeded to grab one of my socks, stick it on the end of his pencil, and hold it up for the entire class to see. Naturally, everyone laughed, which made me feel embarrassed. Looking back, I don't think that either he or my classmates had malicious intentions. How could they have known that I had recently ended a toxic relationship, had several sick family members, and was going through a really trying time? It's funny that even though I've achieved financial freedom, people still make fun of me for the way my home looks or the clothes I wear. In fact, I just had a nice little giggle when someone called me trailer trash on Instagram the other day. It's been a really tough time, but even when I was getting laughed at, I was so determined to save money and get back on my feet that it didn't faze me at all. That was 20 years ago. It's been a long time since I've been called that, but as I previously mentioned, remarks like that don't bother me because, as Pablo Picasso once said, I prefer to live as a poor man with lots of money because I'd much rather live below my means and be comfortable and frugal than try to live according to someone else's standards and end up breaking trying to look rich. With that said, I want to now break down the easy steps that I took to go from someone who is finding your why is the first step towards achieving financial freedom. Your why could be anything from wanting to be able to shop at the grocery store and fill your cart with anything you want without worrying about prices to wanting to have enough money to travel to a new country every year, or maybe your true motivation is simply wanting to work less and spend more time with your family. Whatever your goals may be, knowing what you're working towards will help you get there. Help you visualize your destination and maintain motivation in difficult times. Keep in mind that your reasons may and probably will change over time. For example, in my mid-20s, my goal was to pay off my $25,000 in student loan debt as quickly as possible to avoid having to live with that debt hanging over my head. Currently, my husband and I are working toward the goal of saving money to buy a nice home in a safe neighborhood with excellent schools for our children. The next item on this list is tracking your spending, which is very important because it's difficult to save money if you don't know where your money is going each month. I've been tracking our spending for the past 15 years, first for my husband and me and then for our entire family after our children arrived, so it's become second nature to me, but when I first started, I was surprised to see how much money I was. How much and where tracking your spending also makes it easier to create a budget that you can stick to. I stopped going out to eat multiple times a week at places like Subway, IHOP, and Chipotle and learned how to grocery shop on a budget and meal prep delicious food at home. Instead of going on bookstore binges, I started borrowing books from the library. When I realized that I was overspending on categories like clothes, books, and eating out, that made it easier to reduce expenses and know where and how to cut back. This gets us to number 3, writing a budget. I find that this step is much easier if you track your spending first, but if you haven't been doing so, you can also sit down with your computer and go back through your bank account to try and work backwards to figure out how much money you're spending and break it down into categories. Just be aware that there may be expenses that you've forgotten or that you just haven't tracked. There are many different approaches to budgeting and setting up your budget categories, but I like to divide expenditures into fixed and variable expenses. Fixed costs are typically the same and are paid once a month, like your rent, mortgage, or car payments, and variable expenses can vary from month to month and include things like groceries. Since most people tend to pay with cash, make sure you start tracking right away so that when the next month comes around, you can see how accurate your numbers were. Whether you're gassing up your car, going grocery shopping, or going out to dinner with friends, the amount you save each month is determined by subtracting your expenses from your income. By the way, if you're interested in learning more about this and seeing the precise budgeting system I use, I've included a link to my 50-page minimalist budget bundle below for you to review. It includes the principles for all of this as well as budget trackers and a 12-month spending plan. It's quite possible that you have been overspending, particularly if you're new to budgeting. In that case, it's time to go on to the next phase, which is to reduce wasteful expenditure. You've probably heard the adage, money doesn't grow on trees, but while that may be true in terms of reducing your spending, it's actually quite beneficial to think of your finances as a money tree because, when a tree is pruned, the diseased and dead branches are removed, which can stimulate new growth and make the tree healthier overall. The same is true with money, so if you're trying to make cuts, a good place to start is to look at the categories you've been ignoring or don't care about, like unused gym memberships or subscriptions. Once you've made those cuts, look at your budget to see where you tend to overspend and try to make additional cuts there. For example, you could go out to eat once a week rather than buying lunch or dinner for yourself every day, or you could set aside a certain amount of money each day to save cash so that you'll be more conscious of sticking to your budget when you go shopping for new clothes or shoes. Step 5 is to pay off your debt. After I graduated from college and met my husband, we began talking about our future. We spoke about the wonderful things, like organizing our wedding, and the bad things, like how we were going to pay off our debt. My spouse had already paid off his college loans when we started dating, but I had $25,000 in outstanding debt. Had loans covering his condo and automobile. Using a combination of budget-friendly tasks and other frugal living techniques, we were able to pay off $250,000 in debt over the course of 5 years. Your local library has a ton of excellent books that you can either purchase or read for free. I'll make sure to link to a few of my favorite books about personal finance and debt repayment in the description box below so you can see what I recommend and use. But I can't stress enough how important it is to educate yourself on subjects like personal finance and debt repayment because there are so many tips and tricks that most people are unaware of. For instance, even though I graduated with a degree in speech-language pathology, which isn't the highest-paying job, I was able to defer and cancel part of my loans for each year that I worked there, which allowed me to save money and made it easier for me to pay off my debt. Student loans more quickly, and none of it would have been feasible if I hadn't spent the time learning about the most effective debt repayment techniques. The next step to financial freedom is to create an emergency fund. This is crucial because mishaps can occur and unplanned costs, such as car or home repairs or medical emergencies, can catch you off guard at any time. For instance, in this video about why I'm so frugal, which I'll link here, I told the story of how I badly injured my ankle and was unable to see a doctor because. If you're wondering how much money to save, a good rule of thumb is to try and save up 3 to 6 months of living expenses. If that sounds like a lot, remember that you don't have to save it all at once, especially if you're trying to pay off debt or save for other financial goals at the same time. I didn't have health insurance and couldn't afford to pay for it out of pocket, but if I had an emergency fund, I would have had a safety net to fall back on instead of having to endure so much suffering and anxiety. One of the things I've done to increase my savings is to put my emergency fund into a high-yield savings account. This is great because, 1, you can earn passive income on each dollar that you save, 2, you have quick access to your money in case of an emergency, unlike long-term investments like stocks, and 3, it's separate from your daily bank account. You can also set smaller savings goals, like $250 a month or 5% of your paycheck every time, so that you can slowly build it up over time. Which makes it harder to reach and keeps it out of sight and out of mind. In addition, we have a sizable amount saved for our goal of purchasing a home, which brings us thousands of dollars a month until we're ready to use it. Speaking of which, that brings us to the final step on this list, growing your wealth. Because both earning and saving money are crucial for achieving financial freedom, they are like 3 steps apart from your regular bank account. And just like yin and yang, growing your wealth can be done both actively and passively. In fact, actively looking for ways to increase your income and make more money can make all of the earlier steps on this list much easier. One of the things I did to increase my income in the past was negotiate a 133% raise at work after my 9-month supervision period ended and I became a fully licensed SLP, which gave me an opportunity to grow my wealth. Additional $8,000 a year, or $667 a month, to put toward my goals. I've also engaged in a number of side projects, such as selling unwanted clutter, and have made thousands of dollars every month doing so. In terms of passive income, my spouse and I have invested in our children's college funds and our own retirement funds, which increase annually thanks to the power of compound interest. If you've read this far, I'd love to hear your thoughts on financial freedom and what that would entail for you, as well as any advice or anecdotes you'd like to share in the comments section below. If you're ready to start cutting back on expenses and increasing savings, watch this video featuring 25 of my best frugal living suggestions, which have helped us save more than 50% of our annual income for the past 15 years. Until then, have a good week. Goodbye.